Welcome to today's program. My name is Kelly Henson. I am the brand manager here at dbaPlatform, and our goal is to get you found, which is exactly what today's topic's about. It's about driving retail foot traffic with local inventory. This is newer, but it has had such a big impact on the industry. So a few things that we're going to kind of go over and talk about today are going to be, the local shopping journey, how that's evolved and what Google's response has been. We're also going to dig into how that inventory is actually delivered to platforms like Google and Microsoft and how they're using that local product inventory, especially on search. And then we'll hop over to how other local directories are actually leveraging this inventory and how brands come into play in the local retail space and how they can start to take advantage of this local retail space that really wasn't available to them before. And of course, like all of our webinars, we'll conclude with an open Q&A. And talking about Q&A before I do introductions of our speakers or get things started, I do just want to mention locating that bar at the bottom of your page. It's a little control bar. I think I have a screenshot on the next slide, and you will actually see that Q&A right there. This is where you can drop your questions. If it's relevant in the moment, we'll try to get to it if appropriate, but we'll usually save those for the very end. And if you see a question that you also want more information about, definitely upvote that, because that allows us to kind of prioritize and get through as many questions as possible at the end during the Q&A. So use that box, keep an eye on it, and upvote the questions that you want answered so we can try to get to them. But before we kick things off, I want to quickly introduce our speakers today. We have Chris Lydle. He is our very own at dbaPlatform. He's our CEO. And he was also the global Google lead of local shopping for many years. And so he is very well versed in this space and everything that has been evolving over the past couple years. Additionally, we have Jan Gilbert. He is also with us here at dbaPlatform, but he's also a Google product expert and senior SEO consultant. So both of these guys, I'm not sure if I can think of anyone better to kind of dive into how local inventory has started to impact the local SEO landscape and help retailers get found on search. So I will go ahead and kick it over to Chris and let him get started.
Awesome. Well, super excited to be with you all today. As Kelly said, I spent 10 years at Google and spent several years at the end as global lead of local shopping, which was awesome, and joined DBA about 2 years ago after having worked with them really closely while at Google. And so, usually I'm having to bore my kids or unfortunate dinner guests about this subject. So I'm excited to actually discuss this with some folks who signed up for the task. So it really all starts with stuff that I think everybody knows to some degree, but their local shopping journeys are starting online. And that's true because in general, a lot of journeys are starting online when it comes to local these days. And so we've seen this massive explosion of growth in local queries. And, everything, I've got some examples there: closest gas station, Toledo wedding venues, local attractions, tacos near me. And it's really become a huge part of our culture now that we rely on our phone for almost everything. And if you're ever in those odd circumstances where you're out of service or you got a dead battery for half an hour, you're like, oh my gosh, my world's going to come to an end. There's a fantastic book called Never Lost Again that is kind of the history of Google Maps. And it's true because like the converse of that is true. We're so dependent on this thing now that we'd all be lost if it was gone. But all that said, this trend about people using Google and increasingly Bing and other directories to solve these local queries is just booming. According to Google, it's up about 211% over the past 5 years. There was a study that came out and said that 40% of queries on Google have a local intent. I think some of the data behind that might not have been entirely sound, but I think the fact that Google has gotten so big into local and invested so much in maps and ways is indication of the opportunity that's here. So Google, one of the things that's great about working at Google is that Google sees what people are searching for. So as a product person, it's really exciting. If people start doing a lot of local searches, it starts driving the product team to respond to that need. So in 2012, when Google Plus rolled out, And I think people forget that at the time that they shut it down, it was the third largest social network in the world. I don't think many folks used it, but it was the beginning of Google's local journey. And they had, a local tab here that was featured heavily, Zagat ratings. And interestingly, my company got bought in 2011, right after Zagat got bought, and my company got moved into their office right after they vacated it. So I've been kind of following in their steps ever since, I suppose. But then in 2014, as Google Plus was, starting to near its the end of its life, Google decided that there was a great opportunity for these business listings outside of Google Plus. So that's where you started to see it appear in Maps, and you started to see it appear in Google search results, right? And then, of course, in 2021, because Google likes to change names and stuff every once in a while, it's now the Google Business Profile, right? So a little trip through the past on these things. But one of the great evolutions that Google was also able to see was that product research was also going local. And so this first stat about how 59% of shoppers surveyed said they use Google to research a purchase they plan to make in store or online. I think the initial thought process is like, all right, well, probably the vast majority of that is online, right? They're looking to buy something online. But actually, a pretty substantial number of those folks, so 45% of shoppers said they use it to research a purchase they plan to make in the store. And there's a lot of things that might go into that research. There might be information about the product, the store hours. There's all kinds of things that folks might be researching. But one of the things is, who has this item in stock? I want to buy it today. This is an instant gratification world. Where do I get it? So while we've seen this overall trend in growth of near me searches, there's been a particularly strong growth in retail near me searches. And as you can see, we've got our brand queries. People, they kind of know what they're looking for, whether it's Crocs or Fairlife milk or Tylenol, right? It's kind of surprising that anybody needs to find Tylenol, but there's been a huge growth in those kind of queries. And then also like just general category queries, right? So, if you're the mattress firm, you need to win for mattress near me, right? It's really critical. So not only for a Sealy or a Posturepedic mattress near me, but also winning that category term as well. And it's a really great way to see some of these new emerging brands, because Hey Dude shoes, which apparently every young person wears now, because I never heard of them, and when I started asking them, everyone started pointing at their feet. But that's one that's seen that huge lift because it's new, it's breaking in the market, not everybody's carrying it yet. And how do people find these things? And what we've done with the last thing a local retailer wants is for someone to drive right past their store because they don't know the item that they want is in that store, or even worse, go buy it online because they don't think anybody in the area has it. So, because Google can see what people are searching for, they recognize that these retail near me searches were really important. So they've created this process by which local inventory data can be pulled into Google and then surfaced across a number of their applications. And it all starts with getting a feed of all those items that are in a store and sending it to Google once a day. And when you think about the way Google's, or Bing or any of the search engines work, they go out, they index a site, and then when someone does a query, they find the best page for that site. Well, Google doesn't know what's in your store unless you tell them what's in your store. They don't have robots yet that go through your store and see what's there. Not yet, but who knows? So they're really counting on the retailers to participate that. And in a lot of ways, search engine optimization was a matter of, I'm going to tweak my page and have some citations and all that. But this is like a new animal, right? When Google is looking for the best answer, they're not just looking at the site, they're looking at this inventory feed. And if you're not providing it, you're being left behind. So when the inventory feed is being sent, it's being sent to Google's Merchant Center. And Google Merchant Center is a really powerful thing that a lot of folks aren't familiar with. But basically, long story short, it's your online database of products that you make available for Google to then put throughout all of these various parts of Google. So Google puts it in some places for free. In some places, Google wants you to pay for the privilege of having your inventory serviced. And so we're going to walk through a few of those right now. So as I mentioned, we have search, Google My Business, actually Google Business Profile. I think those of us that have known it as Google My Business have always found it difficult to start calling it Google Business Profile. Shopping, the shopping tab, Google Assistant, and then, most importantly, ads, because the ads are the most impactful thing. And frankly, folks tend to click on them more than they click on the organic listings. So on the search engine result page, if you're familiar with the Google 3-pack, this is when you do a search that Google infers has a local intent. And they decide which of the local listings, which of the local stores near you is the right one to send you to. And so when you provide your inventory, you get that little blue check that says in stock, right? So the customer knows it is in stock. A feed was sent. They're making that affirmative declaration. And this is really powerful because what we've seen is there's a number of factors that drive who shows up in that box and in what order. And what we've seen is proximity actually losing to inventory in this battle. So there might be somebody who might be a little further, there might be a store that's further away, 8 miles away, but they've got the affirmative blue check saying that the inventory is in stock. And they have actually been favored over folks that were closer who only said whose only signal was that their website referenced that they sold that product. So I know that's a little bit of inside baseball, but it really matters because when we've worked with folks who were managing their Google business profile and then added inventory, their impressions of their Google business profile went through the roof. The number of clicks for driving directions to their to their physical location went through the roof. The number of phone calls, any of the elements that allow people to interact with that Google business profile went through the roof when folks added inventory feeds. The other more recent development, actually, I'm going to go back one. The other thing that's another recent development, and there's so many of them, it's hard to keep track. You'll see the product actually shows up in the 3-pack now. Right? They actually have images of the products that are in the 3-pack that are starting to show up. So we're starting to get a lot more featuring of these ads front and center. The other thing that's a really recent development that's pretty exciting is if you do a search on the Google on the main Google search page for a Yeti cooler near me, you'll scroll through pages and pages and the infinite scroll of local product results now. So you'll have your ads at the top, you'll have the 3-pack, you'll have the text links, and then you'll have a block of free listings, and then you'll have text links, and then a block of free listings. So these free listings are being pulled up to the front, and folks that are not participating are going to miss out. And then there's see what's in store. So this actually allows folks to search for store inventory from within the Google business profile. So if I do a search for Yeti cooler near me, I click on the 3-pack, I go into the Google business profile. From there, I can even go deeper and see which products they've got in stock at the moment. And even an indicator of if it's in limited stock, right? Because they might only have 3 left, and you might want to know that when you're making your decision. And then we've got the free local listings. And this is the shopping tab on Google. And you see on the left-hand side, one of the filters they have is available nearby, right? So these are free listings that show up, and they allow you to be found for folks that are looking for products near them on the Google Shopping tab. And this is free. And then Google Assistant, not surprisingly, in many cases, they're kind of just translating a query and turning it into a query string, right? Your voice query turning into a text query string. So if I'm driving around and I want to know where a Yeti cooler is near me, I can ask Google and they'll tell me. And if you use a Nest device that has a screen on it, you'll see those free listings actually show up on the Nest screen itself now, right? So even for Google Assistants that have a visual component, you're starting to see that. And then now this is the big boy, local inventory ads. And local inventory ads, not surprisingly, get the bulk of the clicks because they're at the top of the page. And what a lot of folks don't know is that on a mobile phone, the first spot in that carousel gets 75% of the clicks, right? So like, not only is it important for you to get your ads up, you need to have your stuff optimized so that you win that first, second spot for mobile shoppers. So local inventory ads, they are a version of Google's shopping ads, right? So the e-commerce ads have been out for a long time. These were rolled out by Google in 2018. It might be 2017, I'm sorry. So relatively new. They're performance-based, so you only pay when somebody clicks, and they're one of Google's strongest performing ads. So,
and I know it goes without saying, but I always just like to point out that those local inventory ads, you have to have the inventory set up first, right? You have to have the free part set up to actually create the ads. And so you kind of have to crawl before you start running, so to speak. And so, but I think it works out best because then you're kind of forced to get the best of both worlds with free inventory and paid. So I just wanted to mention that real quick.
now, Kelly, that makes a ton of sense. And one of the things that's great is that when you provide your local inventory for the free listings, you start getting access to insights about which of those products are driving the most queries, right? And that's one thing that it's a little complicated to get to, but we have at DBA, we've got a unified dashboard that provides all this information. So if you have that insight in which products are people searching for that are driving clicks to your local inventory feed, you can then focus on those for ads, right? Those are your winners. Those are a great opportunity to focus on those. So Microsoft followed up with local inventory ads in 2019. And as you can see, like they look a lot like Google local inventory ads, which makes a lot of sense, right? Microsoft has a robust e-commerce business. And so getting into the local inventory business just made a ton of sense. And they performed very similarly, right? And this is true for our vehicle listing ads, where we'll do a separate session on that. But it's a fungible thing. It's apples to apples. The difference is that there's some really interesting stats about the Microsoft audience. It can be a unique audience, right? There's a lot of folks who use both. There's a lot of folks who use Bing exclusively. And one of the reasons for that is a lot of corporate devices have Edge as the default browser because there isn't a support contract for Chrome. So a lot of regulated business, you have to use Edge. And if you use Edge and you're searching your search bar, you're going to return Bing results. And as more folks have been sent home to work with company laptops that they're using for multiple purposes, they're using Edge more and more. And the truth is, the results that they're getting in Bing are pretty good. And Microsoft's done a good job of kind of not beating you over the head over the fact that you're not on Google anymore, that you're on Bing, right? Because the results are great, the experience is the same. And so they're really building market share. And as we all know, there's been a tremendous amount of interest in Bing over the past 6 weeks with all the ChatGPT announcements. So we think that there's been a huge influx of new Bing users. There's a really great affluent base that's already there. And one last note about the audience that we talk about a lot in the vehicle space is a lot of times when you mention a Bing audience, people go like, oh, old people. And the response is, well, people with money. And like a lot of times when I'm trying to sell stuff, I want to find people with money. And as an old person, I find the line of questioning offensive. But Microsoft also is big in the free listings game now as well. And if you haven't been over to the Microsoft Shopping Marketplace or the vehicle marketplace, go take a look. They've done a lot. It's really impressive, and they're doing a lot of interesting things to drive people from Windows into the Microsoft ecosystem, whether it be Bing or Start or any of the other great places that Microsoft has made available. So if you're a Windows user, you might have noticed recently invitations to switch to Edge. or that the search bar at the bottom of your Windows taskbar now has a Bing logo on it, right? So Bing has kind of been sneaking up on folks, and I think with the recent announcements have got a lot of folks interested. We've had more inbound requests for information about Microsoft inventory than we've ever had before by a long shot. So we're real exciting to be partnering with Microsoft on that. But there's other, I think in general, there's obviously the massive search engines, but there's also other ways that folks can leverage their inventory to drive retail traffic. And one is partnering with a great partner of ours called Locally. And Locally does a lot of great things for retailers and brands. But one of the key tools they have is that they make the best store locators, and they work with some of the best brands on that. So, for example, if I go to the Yeti website, and when we talk about people doing online research, they're going to end up on the Yeti website if they're researching Yeti products, right? And when they do, Yeti has a store locator that shows all the great places close to you that is now where those Yeti products are available. And so I might be giving away my location a little bit here with my screen grabs, but as you can see, Yeti is going to drive people to locations where they can buy the product. And so if I click one deeper in, and then I'm able to search the inventory of my local store, then I can look and see what they've got in stock right now. And then if I want to click through, I click through and it actually brings me to the Dick's page to allow me to make that purchase, right? So, and Locally works with small retailers, huge retailers, the whole gamut. And when you think about where people are doing their research for local products, they're going to go to Google and Bing, and they're going to go to the brand site. If you've got those things covered, you've probably got most of it covered. Another recent entrant in the local inventory game is Simon Malls. So Simon Malls, one of the largest mall operators in the country. And it's interesting because I think a lot of folks have kind of written malls off. But as we've seen people return to the physical world and shopping, the malls have seen a massive influx of new shoppers and people returning. People are looking to get out of the house. If I'm not going to the office every day, I got to get out of the house sometimes. People are starting to go back to the movies, and the movies were a big draw for the malls. So the malls are really starting to thrive again. And Simon has, because they've got a lot of great innovative people over there, they recognize this trend about people doing these local searches. So they rolled out Simon Search recently. And Simon Search allows you to search the contents of your local Simon mall. So before I go to the mall, I can search on the website. I can search on the app. I can also, once I get into the mall, I can go up to a kiosk and do my search there, right? It's interesting. Like my son, who's much more of a fashion plate than I am, he had a very specific pair of Converse that he wanted. And not every store, while all the athletic shoe stores carried Converse, not all of them carried the one that he wanted, right? So this was last year. The Simon Search opportunity would have been really useful for me then. And so, it's great. I mean, you go in, you make your search, gives you results, and then it'll actually guide you through the mall to actually get you to that location, right? So just one more example of once you go through the effort of exposing your inventory, you want to get it out to as many relevant places as you can. So right now, big retailers are really dominating local inventory, particularly on Google and Bing. And if you do a local search on Google and Bing, you're going to find a lot of these big guys really kind of sucking all the air out of the room. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that, these folks have all had robust e-commerce businesses for a long time. So they were familiar with Google Merchant Center. They were familiar with Google Shopping ads. And as a result, for them to kind of get into the local inventory piece was a little bit less of a stretch. They either had full-time staff that knew how to do shopping ads, or they worked with agencies that knew how to do shopping ads. Because they are true omni-channel companies, they've had to enable buy online, pick up in store first. These are the first folks that did buy online, pick up in store. You can't do buy online, pick up in store unless you know what's in the store and you've got it available digitally. So they've had those great advantages. The other reason why a lot of these folks have been so active is that these guys have also, because they're omni-channel advertisers, they compete with e-commerce and they compete with local, and they're able to find the lowest price by kind of gaming the system a little bit because they get them to a page and it's either pick up in store or shipped to your house. They really don't care. So as a result, the big retailers have been all over local inventory for years, to the detriment of a lot of the smaller retailers, although folks are starting to catch on. And the reasons for this, like for why it's kind of a challenge, is a couple of them. It really starts with the data sources. Where do people have their inventory data and how can they expose it in a way they can get it to Google? So for the big omnichannel companies that have showed, they've got omnichannel systems at the yin yang, ERP systems that can manage this stuff. But for the smaller retailers, and when I mean smaller, I mean like people with only like 800 locations and less, there's a couple of ways that we can get this data. The most common is your point of sale system, right? Point of sale systems, they see what goes through the till, they see what people are scanning on the way out. So there's a number of ways to capture that data. You can do exports about what was sold and do a look back to infer what was in the store. But most of these modern POS systems actually have a full-blown product catalog involved in them anyway, and the export can be done from there. Now, this is not the one thing I learned when I was at Google is that retailers, there's over 5,000 POS systems in use by US retailers. And the top 3 POS systems by market share have a combined market share of like 18%. So there's a long tail of all these POS systems out there. So there isn't some kind of silver bullet out there that talks to all of them. A lot of the more modern POS systems have easy export for a variety of reasons. Some of the older ones, the Windows-based stuff that hasn't been updated in a long time, stuff by folks like National Cash Register, otherwise known as NCR, some of their older stuff that's out there isn't really good at exports. So that can be a challenge on the data export side. One of the best ways to get it is for your ERP system, right? So the big guys like Home Depot and Walmart, they've got the world's best enterprise resource planning systems, right? So they know where all their inventory is at all times. They know what the SKUs are. They know what the costs are. They know what the inbound availability is. They're able to push out really detailed inventory feeds. But there's some other ones that are really interesting too, because as we start talking to people like grocers, right? Grocers don't have omni-channel systems, at least most of them don't. A lot of them have kind of older ERP systems that might be a little bit more archaic. So we got to come up with some interesting ways that we might be able to get that, information about what might be in stock. And one of them is a planogram. If you're not familiar with the planogram, a planogram is a tool that architects and fixture installers use to determine where the fixtures are in the store and what the operations staff use to determine which products go in which bay, right? So my Kellogg's cornflakes go here, my CW Post goes here, so that's a really accurate representation of what's supposed to be in the store. And a lot of these planograms are also being married up with in-store availability to allow us to get that product inventory data as well. One of the most innovative ways to capture product inventory data, and one of the ones that we're working really closely on, is RFID data. And if you're not familiar with RFID, RFID is technology that's been around for, 20 years. They're little tags that can be read by a phone or any other device that basically function like a cookie does online, right? It's a little number that you can then go back and look up what that product is, what the color is, what the manufacturer is, but it also actually tracks the exact instance of that. So it's not just that it's a pair of Nike shoes, it's this pair of Nike shoes, right? So it really allows for very finely detailed product information. One of the reasons why we're really very bullish on it is for smaller retailers who are going to have a hard time getting their product inventory. We're working with some brands now who can actually drop ship an RFID enabled shelf. The customer gets the products with the RFID tags on it. They put it on the RFID enabled shelf. the inventory comes to us. So for a smaller retailer who's not very technically savvy, this is a great opportunity. And not that they would ever do their entire store up with RFID, at least not yet. But for some brands, they're willing to incur the cost to allow their products to get visible through their local retail partner. So lots of data sources, and this is what we think about all day at dbaPlatform. So if you're shy, you don't know if you can find a way to get your inventory to Google and Bing and Simon and locally, let us know. We're happy to help. We've got answers. But part of the complexity, the continuing complexity around local inventory is that there's a couple of parts that go into it, right? So you got to send your data to Merchant Center. You got to get it linked to your business profile, and then you got to get that linked to your ads account, right? And it sounds pretty simple. It's not. These are 3 different product groups at Google, and those product groups don't always talk to each other. And there's a lot of points of failure along the way, right? Because you can go back into the data source. Between the data source, Merchant Center, the ads, there's a bunch of things that can break. And trying to debug which of those things are the root of the problem can be challenging. And frankly, there are times at Google where there's a little bit of a ghosting machine. Your GMB profile gets suspended for an unknown reason. Your Merchant Center account gets suspended for an unknown reason. These things happen. They're well documented. They're in the public domain. So it can be challenging. The good thing is that a lot of retailers have gotten better at this, and Google's gotten better at this. And there's companies like dbaPlatform that are out there to get people over these humps. But one of the big opportunities we think is to have brands, just like they work with locally to drive, Yeti shoppers to their local store, but for brands to actually participate in the local inventory ad business. And so we've got a new product called Brand Local that allows a brand like Enfamil to go ahead and tap into the Merchant Center and business profile that ShopRite has set up and be able to run those ads on their behalf and then be able to share the results with both parties. And this could work with large retailers and also with small retailers, particularly when you can combine it with an RFID table. This is a huge opportunity, right? Brands have co-op dollars that have been sitting on the sidelines for years, and they're ready to get those co-op dollars back to work. Amazon has created a great business with their sponsored product ads with great folks like L'Oreal, spending a large amount of money over there. These are sponsored product ads on Google, and dbaPlatform has a solution to enable that. And it's a great way to kind of level the playing field for some of the smaller retailers, because frankly, it doesn't behoove brands to only have 5 big box retailers to sell to, right? They'd rather have thousands of retailers, hundreds of thousands of retailers to sell to at a variety of price points, because the local retailer is paying a higher margin than a big box is. So the brands are naturally motivated to keep their retail network strong, and Brand Local is a great tool to enable them to level the playing field.
Yeah, and just to chime in, I think it's also a great opportunity for brands that don't have those local storefronts, right? And there's certain things that sure you can buy online, just like you had in this last example, like formula, but a lot of times those are things that people need in the moment immediately and can't wait on that online buying journey. So I think it also opens the door for that kind of opportunity and landscape.
Kelly, you're absolutely right. And we're working with some really innovative brands where, they had been running kind of a direct to consumer business that was in competition with their retail channel. And now what they're doing is they're taking the order and then they're just sending the order to the retailer to be picked up. So there's, one of the things that's been an issue is, with this whole opportunity for e-commerce and brands is channel conflict. And to your point, Kelly, being able to link up together is a way to kind of mitigate that problem. But quick plug for dbaPlatform. This is what we do. We do it all day long. We are a local inventory for products and vehicles. We also do local listings, Google Business Profile Management, Apple Business Connect Management, all that kind of good stuff. But we're really industry leaders when it comes to local inventory. And we are proud to have with our partnerships with Google and Microsoft and Apple and Simon and locally and a host of others. We know this stuff inside and out, and we'd love to work with you on getting your inventory online.
Awesome. I think we just have one main question so far in the Q&A. And if anyone attending has a small or large question, definitely feel free to drop that in right now. And yes, I'll answer that one real quick. Caleb, yes, you will get this recording. We always post that. So we'll send that over to you and make sure that you have a copy of this. But I think we kind of just talked about it. But if we want to kind of dive into the question above, which is, how do I compete with the big box retailers for these local inventory ad spots?
Yeah, and so the key thing is finding a partner who can get your inventory online, right? The big box guys have a big head start, but I can tell you, just as a retailer, this is a brand does not want to be beholden to 5 big box retailers. Google doesn't want to be beholden to 5 big box retailers either, right? So there's a lot of effort in helping smaller retailers. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but also it's good for Google and it's good for Microsoft. So there are some challenges. I think working with brands is a great way to do it. We're talking to more brands every day that have resources for their local retailers to enable them. So feel free to tell them, if you're talking to your brand partners, feel free to tell them to call us and we can, redirect it back your way. But also there's a product that Google has called Pointy. That's a box that allows you to go ahead and send inventory data up. There's some limitations with it, but it does exist. That's another way to get started. But if anybody's interested in kind of digging into these opportunities to level the playing field with big box retailers, go to dbaPlatform.com. Contact sales, get a demo, all those good things. We do this all the time.
And one thing overall, not specifically with inventories, the smaller stores, you have more flexibility. The larger, stores, they have huge websites with teams and departments, and even working with them sometimes as to help them with SEO, it's like, well, change this. Oh, well, we can't do that, or it takes 6 months before we optimize this or change this. So take a look at your websites and make sure your product pages are optimized. They have good descriptions and all that stuff. The smaller guys have, you can work faster and adapt faster. And I think that's where your advantage is to just not sit back and wait for things to happen. You can take advantage of these things faster than some of the big box stores can.
That is definitely one of the advantages, the nimbleness, particularly because, for a lot of the folks that are kind of in between the small, nimble retailer and the big box, they kind of have the challenges of both worlds there. They have the bureaucracy of the bigger companies, but they're resource constrained like the smaller companies. And so that's a place where it's one of our sweet spots as well. There was a question here about difference between companies that upload inventory manually and update regularly versus companies that have a live inventory feed. So I just want to clarify, Google does allow you to manually put in products, right? That's distinct from your product inventory feed. If you go into Google Business Profile, you can actually manually put in several products. That functions completely differently than the inventory feed. So when the little blue check mark comes up in the business profile, that's only because they provided a feed. So if you went in and manually added those items, you're not going to get the benefit of that, right? Now, if what you're saying is, hey, I push my feed to Google on a daily basis, my full feed, as long as you're pushing it once a day in the standard spec and you're getting an acknowledgement back that Google's received it, that's going to be fine. Now, the one thing I would say is, with our more sophisticated retailers now, we're offering, we're getting product updates at least once an hour. And part of the reason that matters is if you're doing advertising, you certainly don't want to be advertising anything that you don't have in stock. And then let's see here. It says, how does the process look to use the dbaPlatform local inventory for a smaller retailer and the time frame to get the system set up? I hate to give a mealy-mouthed answer, but it kind of depends on your circumstances. For example, if you happen to be using a point of sale system that we're already integrated with, it can be as quick as a week. If we have to kind of go back and figure out what's going on and create a new process, that can take up to 5 weeks because you might need to do some things on your end as well. But the fastest way to get the answer to that question is hit us up on dbaPlatform, hit the contact sales, and you can speak with one of our specialists about your particular circumstances so we can kind of give you a prognosis. And then the specific requirements for using the DBA local inventory service, it's really just the requirements of the end platforms, right? So if the data that is at the root of the data you want to send to Google satisfies their requirements, satisfies Simon's requirements, satisfies Microsoft's requirements, satisfies locally requirements, those are really the key requirements. But fortunately, that's the stuff that we bake into our system. So we work with you all to get the data out of the infrastructure where you have it, and then we get it clean, we get it optimized, we employ we optimize it with the best practices for all of the various distribution outlets, and then we send the right feed to the right platform that they're looking for. So the good news is for a smaller retailer is you don't have to keep up with the latest changes at Bing, the latest changes at Simon, the latest changes at Google. Give it to us. We'll take care of it. We'll get it there. And I think one thing that's really I kind of want to talk about super quick, and this is a little bit more DBA specific. We've spent a lot of time focused on the value proposition of this is really hard to do. We're gonna help you do it. But what we're adding and evolving is you're gonna get better results when you do it with us, right? We've got some new ex-Googlers that have joined our team, and we're going to be taking basically the best practices from within Google, and we're going to be baking it into our infrastructure. And we have deep partnerships with Microsoft. We're going to be taking their best practices and baking it into ours as well. So not only are we going to minimize the barriers to getting inventory online, the folks that work with us, even if you're sophisticated, you're going to get better results by working with DBA than you would on your own.
Yeah, and to that point, Chris, a part of our program too, and I hope I'm not wrong in saying this, but I want to bring it up because I know that we've kind of been talking about Google and Microsoft separately. But if we're taking the time to work with a partner and get their inventory connected, like we're going to make sure that goes to Google because we know that's where people want their inventory, but we're also going to get that connected to the other platforms as well, which I think is just a huge value add in terms of time savings and everything like that.
100%. And because we've got our team always looking at what's coming around the pike. We knew that Bing was going to be a big deal before the rest of the market kind of knew that Bing was going to be a big deal, right? So we're all about local inventory. We're all about keeping an eye on what's latest and greatest. And to Kelly's point, we're always going to keep adding more value into our distribution services because the more distribution points we have for our customers, the more value that we deliver, and the more likely you're going to stay on as happy customers.
Absolutely.
All right. I don't think we have any other questions.
I don't either. I think we're starting to wrap up. We did good on time today.
We did. I'm proud of myself for not blathering for too long.
Yeah. I know many of you probably have joined our other webinars, but of course, we always kind of like to conclude with inviting you to join our private Facebook group. It's managed by dbaPlatform and Jan, and we try to get to answer any of those questions that you have. And it's a great community too, right? There's a lot of other people that are in the local SEO community and can help chime in when you see an issue or have a question. We try to get a handle on those pretty quickly, and we also post any important updates. We do have another webinar next week, actually, and it's going to be with our advisory board, and they're going to really be going over, the local SEO landscape and some of those more basic questions of how do we optimize, what's changing in the industry, what do you need to change to stay on top of the game. So if you or you have any team members that are kind of wanting more of that local SEO basics information, that would be a great webinar. So join this Facebook group and we will post the information there for all of you. Awesome, but I think that concludes it. We were able to get to everyone's questions, and we will be posting a recording of this as well. So stay tuned for that, but thank you everyone for joining, and Chris, thank you for hosting today's webinar.
Thanks for putting out, folks. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.